May 10, 1940. Over 130 Nazi divisions, backed by the powerful Luftwaffe in the air, were on the assault throughout Western Europe. More than 300,000 British and French troops in northern France and Belgium were caught completely off guard. Increasing numbers of Britons, dissatisfied with the way in which Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain was handling the war, were now demanding a change in the government. The public were calling for Churchill, the newest member of the cabinet and the First Lord of the Admiralty, to replace Chamberlain. The situation he was inheriting was extremely bleak. Some 230,000 English soldiers and another 70,000 French troops were beginning a massive withdrawal to Dunkirk. The Germans were now in the position of annihilating the retreating British expeditionary force. For all intents and purposes, that would have meant the end of the British Army. Churchill now focused his attention on what would become a rescue unprecedented in military history. As the evacuation was completed on June 4th, Churchill addressed Parliament, acknowledging that a miracle had taken place at Dunkirk.
Sir, I have myself full confidence that if all do their duty, we shall prove ourselves once more able to defend our island home. We shall go on to the end. We shall fight in France. We shall fight on the seas and oceans. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender.
Well, I'm standing on the roof of Broadcasting House on this evening of Sunday in September, and we had a warning earlier on the day, but this is the first time the raiders actually appeared over London. And they were met by a tremendous barrage of anti-aircraft fire. You could see their flashes quite plainly, and we had shrapnel falling around, and away on the far side of the river there's another severe fire.
September the 7th, 1940, became known as Black Saturday, the official beginning of what the world would soon call the Blitz. One of the key reasons why the British managed to keep going, despite the nightly barrage of Luftwaffe bombs, was seeing their Prime Minister, Winston Churchill, out among them on a regular basis. From the moment the Blitz started, Churchill ventured out into the streets to inspect damage and offer comfort to Londoners. After one raid, the Prime Minister arrived at the scene of a bombed house, only to pitch in and help the rescue workers.
Winston went down on his knees to clutch a woman who, still conscious, was being dug out. For a moment, they looked at one another. Winston with his coat and trousers spattered with mud, the woman covered from head to foot in dust. Then, with a tremor in her voice, she thanked him and was taken away by friends. "There goes greatness," Winston said. Tears were streaming down his face. There were many occasions when he would silently, and without shame or embarrassment, weep without speaking for many minutes.
Here is the news. Japan's long-threatened aggression in the Far East began tonight with air attacks on United States naval bases in the Pacific.
As Churchill switched on the radio, there was a bulletin about the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, which had just occurred. The Prime Minister jumped to his feet and said, "Great Britain shall declare war on Japan." 2 weeks later, Prime Minister Churchill arrived in Washington, D.C. to meet with President Roosevelt and strategize the now joint war effort between Great Britain and the U.S.
Churchill arrives and they put him up in the room, which is now known, of course, as the Churchill Room. And he said, "Now I have a few rules. There's not to be any talking in the hallways around it. I don't like to hear that. I hate to hear whistling. And I need to have a bottle of sherry every morning before breakfast. I need to have scotch and soda before lunch. And I need to have wine and liquor and brandy after dinner."
The day after Christmas, Winston Churchill was given an honor accorded to a very few. He addressed the joint houses of the United States Congress.
"Till I avow my hope and faith, sure and inviolate, that in the days to come the British and American peoples will, for their own safety and for the good of all, walk together in majesty, in justice, and in peace.
The US Congress, which a year earlier had balked at helping Great Britain, was now giving its Prime Minister a standing ovation. Around the United States, there was no more popular a figure. Winston Churchill, who'd been in the political wilderness just a few years before, who some had believed would never last as Prime Minister, now returned to England in triumph. He had forged an alliance with the United States, one that few would have predicted when he became Prime Minister in 1940. Against all odds, he'd led his nation as it won the Battle of Britain and survived the Blitz.
The vital importance of Winston Churchill was that he kept the flag of freedom flying. I'm convinced that but for Winston Churchill, it is entirely possible that the Nazi swastika would, to this day, be flying over the Palace of Westminster, over Buckingham Palace, and over every capital city of Europe as far east as Moscow.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome from London, England, Sir Winston Churchill's granddaughter, Mrs. Celia Sandys. This special anniversary, the Simon Wiesenthal Center is honored to present its Medal of Valor posthumously to Sir Winston Churchill, the man who saved Western civilization during the darkest period of human history.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank Rabbi Marvin Heyer and the Simon Wiesenthal Center for inviting me to take part in this wonderful event, and to take this opportunity to congratulate the center for all the extraordinary valuable work it does. All those honored tonight have displayed exceptional qualities and performed extraordinary deeds for their fellow human beings. One characteristic they all share is courage. Of courage, my grandfather wrote, "Courage is rightly esteemed the first of human qualities, because it is the quality which guarantees the others." Courage comes in various forms, physical and moral. During the first part of Churchill's life, the challenge of physical courage was ever present. Riding with the Spanish forces against the Cuban guerrillas in 1895, fighting on the northwest frontier of India a couple of years later, taking part in the last great cavalry charge of the British Army, the Battle of Omdurman in the Sudan, escaping from imprisonment by the Boers and being on the run in South Africa with a price on his head of £25 for his capture, dead or alive, and fighting in the trenches in World War I. From then on, for the rest of his life, it was moral courage that he needed most. During the 1930s, when condemned by his party to the political wilderness, his was a lone voice warning of the threat that was building up across the English Channel. He could see the danger of Hitler's Nazi Germany, but his fellow countrymen did not want to hear his warnings and blocked their ears. But he didn't give in, and 70 years ago next Monday, the 10th of May, 1940, he was called upon to lead his country in its darkest hour. As Rabbi Haas said, He felt that he was put on this earth for a purpose, and his moment had come. He described his feelings like this: I felt as though I were walking with destiny, and that all my past life had been but a preparation for this hour and this trial. For the next 5 years, he had to display supreme courage to inspire the British to hold on when threatened with invasion, and to convince the Americans to join forces to fight the Nazi monster. He was a living example of the advice he gave to the boys of Harrow School after they'd suffered a bombing raid. Never give in. Never give in. Never, 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 never. In nothing great or small, large or petty. Never give in except to convictions of honor and good sense. I am greatly honored and very proud to receive this award in the name of my grandfather, Winston Churchill.